Hey folks, Judd, Zulgad, Andrew Krammer, 1500ESPN.com. Thanks for coming to the website. Day one, Andrew, of Vikings training camp has opened up, and before they even took the field, or around the time that they were starting through their walkthrough, we got news that Blair Walsh, the kicker, has signed a contract extension. This continues a trend, and I give the Vikings credit for this, really since the Wolves bought the team. This continues a trend of if they have a young player who they like, they don't wait. They don't let that player get to the open market. They lock that player up.
Most definitely, and I guess the only news on them waiting is that it sounds like they're going to wait on the Harrison Smith extension, but they have a fifth-year option with him, so it's not technically a contract year. But they locked Blair Walsh up to reportedly a 4-year deal to make him one of the higher-paid kickers in the league, and that's coming off of a year where he really wasn't statistically at his best. In the first year at that outdoor TC at Bank Stadium, he ended up missing a career-high 9 field goals. 2 of those were blocked, and 1 was from 68 yards. But you're right, Judd, and this is probably going to start maybe a string of contract extensions potentially from a 2012 draft class that has contributed quite a bit. When you're talking about guys like Rhett Ellison, Robert Blanton, and you had Walsh, and obviously with the 2 first-rounders that could get deals done in the future. So between Matt Khalil and Harrison Smith, depending on how they play. So that was something where I think it was inevitable, especially with Walsh. They didn't bring in any competition for him when it was a contract year, and so it seemed to be obvious with that. But there's plenty of other question marks on this team, especially when it comes to injuries. It sounds like we found out today that Casey Matthews, the linebacker they signed in free agency, never practiced in the offseason with a hip injury, and he was placed on IR before training camp ever started. Josh Robinson on the PUP list, and apparently Anthony Barr, with that knee injury he's still dealing with, is not in shape.
What's the concern like with Barr? Because this is a guy who was a fantastic draft pick, had a really good season for the Vikings early on. He got hurt, had the knee problem, had surgery, and then it was weird because we got to the offseason and he wasn't practicing. And at some point early on in the workouts, Mike Zimmer offered up that Anthony Barr had an injury problem, wouldn't reveal it, but said it was not the same thing that ended his 2014 season. I guess my question is this. As we like to say, you can't make the club in a tub. At what point do you get concerned about the fact that Barr is if not injury prone, certainly not on the field as much as you want or like?
I'm certainly not concerned at this point in it, but if we're talking the same conversation at this point next week or even 2 weeks into training camp, then obviously that is a concern. If he's not healthy enough to get conditioned at this point, you're hoping that now he's healthy enough under the Vikings' supervision now to get to that point, and it shouldn't take longer than a week or 2 for him to be back out there at full speed. If this drags on, then obviously you need to be concerned because this is a guy who, like you said, had that knee injury last year, ended up really struggling through it when he tried to play through it, to his credit, but the Vikings ultimately decided to shut him down and have surgery with him. But he's not at the point now where he can get out there and run around full speed. They feel like they need to pull him off the field during team drills and do conditioning exercises with him. It's at that point. So I wouldn't call it concerning yet, but it's definitely not something that you would want to hear if you're a Vikings fan.
Do you get the feeling like I do that that when the schedule came out, I picked this team to go 8-8. I think they're a team on the rise. So I do like them.
Yeah.
All of that being said, as training camp starts, do you get the feeling that expectations are going higher and higher? And and Peterson's back, and Bridgewater is in his 2nd year. But I think people think that these are answers. And to me, Peterson might have a great year, but he's still 30 years old. Bridgewater looked to me at times last year to certainly be an improving quarterback, but he's a 2nd-year quarterback. I almost think people are jumping to conclusions and expectations are going sky high when the reality should be, I'm not saying that people shouldn't expect the team to be good, but if you're saying to yourself 10 wins, I think you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself.
Yeah, especially with that schedule too. It's not an easy schedule. If they were running the same gauntlet they did last year, it was actually comparatively, it seems like it would be a little bit easier too, because at the end of the year they've got those. I think they have 2 NFC West games in 5 days between Arizona and Seattle. Then you end the season at Green Bay. Sure. And when we're talking about this team now in July, before we even get into the full swing of training camp, I think you're right. I think it can get a little bit carried away, and I think that's just natural in the NFL when you talk about the hype around a team. And really this revolves around Teddy Bridgewater now. Teddy Bridgewater did not show us anything for you to say, oh, he's Andrew Luck or he's the next Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. But what he showed was a capability to make smart decisions and potentially be that franchise quarterback the Vikings have been searching for a very long time. That's where the optimism comes from, especially with Peterson in the backfield. But I think you're right.
And that's great, but I think you got to pull back.
It can get carried away, especially too with a defense that finished 25th against the run last year, did not rush properly against passers all the time, missed a lot of sack opportunities. Mike Zimmer would be the first to tell you that. And so, yes, this is a team that they have had to manage expectations. And now you hear the media noise but Mike Zimmer said the other day that he has had to he told his team earlier in the offseason program, just shut that out because we have a lot of work to do. And I think
hard to do.
And I think the Vikings realize that, though at least certain players on the team do.
Defense against the run last year, without any interior line changes for the most part, tell me why people should be more optimistic, if there is a reason that it's going to take a step up from 2014 to 2015.
Yeah, Mike Zimmer said it today, too. Linval Joseph, a guy who missed training camp last year because of a freak accident where he takes a stray bullet when he was just hanging out at a club, really was not involved in any incident. It was just an accident and something that shouldn't have happened with him. Because of that, he was not fully caught up to what he needed to do last year. I think the run struggled because of that. He was supposed to be that big body nose tackle that held up two blockers at once, tried to open lanes for those linebackers. It didn't happen as often as it should have last year. Mike Zimmer said it today. He thinks now that Linval looked really, really good in the offseason practices. He kind of obviously hesitated to say he was going to be great because you still haven't put pads on, but with Linval now having that full kind of year under his belt, a healthy offseason program in this defense, the Vikings feel now they should have that rocket nose tackle. That's something they were missing last year that they feel they weren't able to have.
Our work is done here. Andrew Krammer of 1500ESPN.com. Certainly check the website on a regular basis throughout training camp and the season to read his stuff. I'm Judd Zulgad, Mackey and Judd, 9 a.m. Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. Thanks for coming to the website.